Welcome to Working Dogs and Whiskey. Join Sean White and Jonathan Moses as they pour a glass and dive into insightful and fun conversations about dogs in all their incredible roles. So grab your favorite drink and let's raise a glass to great stories, laughs, and a whole lot of dog talk.
All right. Welcome back to Working Dogs and Whiskey. I'm sitting here with my co-host Jonathan Moses. What's going on, man?
Nothing much. Just ready to get started with this episode. How about you?
I'm good, man. Anyways, we've already been talking about it, so let's go ahead and get straight into it because I can tell this is going to be a pretty good episode and potentially our longest episode. But we are sitting here with our new friend, we'll call him a friend, Chad Mackin. Chad, how's it going, man?
Yeah, call me a friend. That's cool. I like you guys. You're cool. So yeah, thanks for having me on, man. And
Of
we've been having
course.
fun already before we got started. So
Yeah. Now, first of all, I want to start out. Thank you first for coming on. Background: how all three of us semi met. It was through the internet actually. John had posted a video on the dog trainers lounge. Is that what it is? And then
yeah,
it was a video with the Borable, I think episode 8 or something like that. We talked about it. But anyways, Chad had entered his comment, and I was like, "Holy shit!" Chad Mackin said something about us, and then And and then Chad, you were actually nice enough to listen to the episode where went a little bit more descriptive about the video, and then came back and gave us some feedback. And that act alone stuck out for me. I was like, this is a genuine person, number one, a genuine dog guy. And I think the feedback for me was it wasn't what I wanted to hear, is what we needed to hear. And you stood by what you saw in the video, what you heard in the podcast. You were very straightforward. You know, some things you didn't agree with. This is what you did agree with. And I think for me, that's what dog training is about when you're having a conversation with other dog trainers, you know, at whatever stage, you know.
man, I remember that video and I remember listening to the podcast and I remember the conversation. I have no idea what I told you guys though. I don't remember what I said. I hope I was polite and kind in what I said. I hope I wasn't like an asshole.
No.
Because I do remember being impressed with you guys, like the conversation that we had afterwards. I walked away feeling like it was a good conversation, but I honestly don't remember. I don't remember criticizing anything. I felt like like when you said that, like you said what not what we want to hear, but we need to hear. I was like, oh, was I mean?
No. And I think that may have been the wrong terminology or phrase to articulate what I meant, but I think it was probably it had something to do with like the terms. I really don't remember the specifics. I just remember you made a comment about, you didn't agree with everything in the episode. And then you're like, but I agreed with like something like the spatial pressure and all that. And then you elaborated and all that.
Yeah, yeah. I think now it's coming back to me. I think I remember. I felt like like there was something with the timing of the pressure. The
Hmm.
timing, I thought the timing was off, but I don't remember if it was too soon or too late. I think I think maybe I felt like you didn't release pressure early enough, like by like a millisecond, like not like this is very small, if I remember correctly. Like yeah, that's starting to come back to me now.
But I
So
mean,
I'm glad.
or go ahead.
I was just saying, glad you guys took it in the right, in the intended way. Like, it's a lot of people in this industry. If you don't do anything but tell them how awesome they are, they get
Exactly.
defensive and so I try to keep my mouth shut a lot. But I guess I must have been impressed with you guys before I said anything, or I wouldn't have bothered. So,
And that's more of the sentiment that I'm getting at. It's like, I mean, all three of us have probably had mentors at some point, and I know some of mine were they could come off a little abrupt or assholes, if you will, but they had good intentions. And even the worst of them, where I was like, dude, I fucking can't stand this. But then you take a moment and digest what they're actually telling you, and you see it come to light, and you're like, oh, they are correct, they just don't know how to articulate themselves. The articulation on your end was perfectly fine, dude. We understood.
okay.
But that intent of, hey, like you said, I appreciate your work, and yeah, you're a millisecond off or whatever the case may be, and that is what I'm getting at. That's respectable in my my opinion. Like you said, you just don't get that anymore. Like everybody wants to be like, oh, that was good or whatever, or they're going way left, like that was dog shit. You should have whatever the case. And I'm like, dude, just this is what the podcast is about. We just changed our intro, but before that, we were talking about something about open and honest conversations, and that's what the intent is, back then, and what we hope to gain now in this episode. So, thank you for having us on, or for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me on. Like, honestly, it's always nice to get invited to be on a podcast.
Yeah.
It's cool to know that people are interested in what you have to say.
Mhm.
Because I think for me at least, there was a time where I had the dog training conversations with J Jack, and that was before the Canine Paradigm came out. Like, and I think at that time it was probably the most downloaded podcast about dogs that wasn't sponsored. Like,
Mm.
there were some big sponsored things that we weren't even looking at, but in terms of just we never got a penny of sponsored money, right? Like we opened up a Patreon at some point, and I think we had one subscriber because we never put Patreon content up there. It's like, well, if you want to donate, but we didn't promote it. Like we were just having fun talking about dogs. But there was a time where if I go onto social media and somebody asks what podcast you listen to, like if we weren't in the first 5 comments, I would get depressed. And like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? And now my name rarely shows up in those lists anymore, right? So
Mm.
I'm kind of my star is descending right now, I guess, in a way. Like, and some of that's deliberate. Like, I'm not pushing myself, I'm not promoting myself like I used to, and I'm not doing podcasts anymore, really, except when I'm a guest. I told you guys, I still have my account to upload. Something to bark about could come back any day now, but I don't want to start recording again until I know I'm going to have consistent content, and right now I'm just not consistent about producing anything besides the work I do with dogs every day. So it's nice to be invited, I guess, is what I'm saying. Like it matters to me. I'm not this guy that like walks around and thinks that uh I'm super important to the dog world. I think I'm super important to the dogs I work with, and I'm super important to the clients I work with. The dog world will be fine without me, I, I still have some good stuff to say, and maybe honestly, I think I might have more valuable stuff to say now than I did then. But the market is so saturated. There's so many voices out there. Like, I'm not gonna fight to be heard. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna, like, I don't have the legs for that race no more. It's like, like, if people want to hear what I have to say, they can come find me, and But yeah, so it's nice. It's nice when people do say, "Hey, I want to hear what you have to say." That's a nice affirmation. So I am grateful to you for inviting me on.
I will say, every time, like, I'll be scrolling through Facebook, and like you said, the social media just platforms are so saturated with dog training information that sometimes I'll just skip through or go through a lot of stuff. Anytime I see like you put a post up or you wrote something, because it's
Mhm.
usually different than what you see a lot of people promoting. Like, it's insightful. It's more so focused on the dog's well-being, the frame of mind they should be in, and like the prerequisites to training. So I always stop and read whenever I see your stuff. I'm like, wait, Chad posted something. Go through, read it, and it's usually pretty good. Whether I see it in the dog trainer's lounge or like I just see it in my Facebook feed, but I do look for a lot of the stuff you put up just because it's different than what you usually see out there.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm with John on that. I was gonna bring it up later on in the episode. Yeah, definitely on Instagram, dude. Don't change the colors, because if you change the colors when you write stuff out,
Yeah,
I'm gonna scroll past it. But the gray background with the blue writing, I'm like, oh shit, that's Chad. Let's read it. So
Yeah.
I appreciate it,
So
man.
so that's a deliberate choice, but it started as an accident, sort of. So I just sort of I created I have a photo app that I use for my little Instagram slides. And I've had it forever. And it's got a limited number of fonts, a little bit limited number of font colors, and a limited backgrounds. And I created that one, and I liked it. And literally, I keep editing the same picture. Like,
Mm,
I just changed the caption. I don't make new ones. Like, once I post them, I make a
yeah.
new one. So it's become a theme. And I did see this was really cool a few weeks ago. Somebody shared one of them, and somebody said, does anyone know if this is actually if Chad actually said this? And somebody goes, oh, that's his signature background and font and color
See,
scheme.
here it is.
So I'm like, cool. So brand recognition works even when you're not trying. But yeah, I appreciate it. And it has reached a point where people do notice that particular color scheme and recognize that that's me talking. And that's pretty cool because I don't think a lot of people have that word.
It is
But
on
you
this
know what I'm
podcast
saying?
here.
You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
demand
Like
I make up
they,
stuff every episode, dude. So you're good.
they don't have that sort of brand recognition. And
Yeah.
I didn't even try for that. It was just I was too lazy to come up with a new one.
So it's
So
organic. Yeah.
Yep.
There you
yeah.
go.
That's what we'll call
So speaking on like brain recognition, so we'll kind of shift gears on the conversation and get more into the dog training aspect. One of the things that I know sticks out about you to me is your ability to teach. And I know that wasn't listening to other interviews and things like that. I know that wasn't always the case, which is the same with anybody that stays in this industry. But I wanted to kind of pick your brain on like as far as teaching, how did you develop? Like where did you start out or and where you're at now, kind of with.
Well, that's a really good question. I have to think about my answer for a minute because yeah, you're right. Like, one thing that I have particularly been sort of blessed with my whole life is an ability to communicate. I don't know where that comes from. This is one of the most everything that I'm good at in the world. I'm good at because I had to work really hard to get good at it. Like almost everything was an uphill battle, including dogs. Including dogs. Like I have the only natural talent I think I have. I have a good memory and I'm good with words. Those are the only two things I came out sort of out of the box with. Everything else is, like I said, a hard fought battle, and I'm very grateful for those things because those two things work together really well. I can remember often the way something was phrased to me that got through to me. Right? I can remember when somebody says something in just the right way, and I go, "Oh yeah, that's the way to say it." So I can mimic very well.
Mhm.
I also like so when you're teaching somebody about dogs, like there's a couple of things you got to really be thinking about. Like the first thing is obviously you have to understand your own material, right? You have to understand what you're trying to say and how you're trying to say it. And I will say this too, I am a very tough student to have. I have lost like I used to think I was really fortunate because I had always had these really great mentors, but a few years back, I realized it's because if you're not a great mentor, we're not going to get along because I ask a lot of questions, right? And and I have a very very small window of tolerance for bullshit. Like
Mhm.
if you tell me I don't know, that's just the way it is. I'll be like, cool, and I'll keep thinking about it. But if you start making up reasons, and I can tell you don't know, I'm going to lose respect for you. Like that, I'm going to be like I might still keep asking you stuff, but my respect for you is going to shift into another level. And so, like, I have had good teachers because I filter out teachers who, who aren't as introspective as I am, right? And maybe that's another thing I should say that I was born with this natural curiosity. I used to get in trouble as a kid all the time because I'd take my toys apart to see how they worked, and I couldn't put them back together. Get a brand new toy for Christmas, and by the end of the day, it's broken because I had to grab a screwdriver and try and figure out what's going on inside. so like,
Yeah.
so like I have this need to understand things, not just do them. And that serves me very well as a teacher because to be a good teacher, you have to have that understanding. But the other side of that is you also have to be aware of like teachers make a critical mistake and they either teach too much or too little, right? Like, and you got to know your audience, right? It's the same thing with like if you're writing an article or making a YouTube video, you have to really kind of be brutal about what you want to take out because in my head there's so many like tributaries going off for this idea that we can rabbit holes that we can go down and steal from or that I think are fascinating, but they're not actually related to the message I want to get out. But I say, being able to understand, that's the first thing is you got to really have a clear understanding of what you believe and why you believe it. And then I can go as deep as you want on that, right? And if you just want a real surface thing, I can just go here, X, Y, Z. Like one of the things that you hear people, you start reading about teaching, you're running this whole idea of, some people are visual learners, some people are tactile learners, some people are auditory learners. That is largely debunked. Like, I don't mean to say it's not true. I mean to say that in some circumstances, I'm very visual. In other circumstances, I'm very tactile. In other circumstances, I'm very, like, I might have a preference, but there's a lot of play in there. Nobody is consistent as that idea would have you believe. But I will tell you what I believe. There are two types of learners that every teacher needs to understand, and they need to not only know where they are, they need to recognize who they're talking to. And I say there are two types of learners. There's concept learners and process learners. And I am as far into the concept category as you can get. Like, literally, I don't want to know how, I want to know why. And then I will figure out
Okay.
how. You tell me what I'm trying to do. You give me a couple key pieces and let me go play with the puzzle. I don't want you to spell it out for me. I get frustrated. One of the weird things is I almost never listen to dog podcasts anymore because I get frustrated because I want to stop and think about what they just said. I don't want them to tell me where they ended up. I want them to give me the idea and let me run off and think about it. I'll come back. Is this what you came up with? And they're like, yes or no. And here's why. I go, okay, let me fix that. But I like to solve my own puzzles. I don't like having the answer given to me. I don't mind getting a hint. And I do prefer hints, but I want that sense of accomplishment and that sense of exploration. So like, if you just tell me step 1, step 2, step 3, I'm probably not going to be satisfied. Like, and if you give me step 1, 2, step 3, and I say, but why? And you don't have an answer for it, we're kind of done there.
Yeah.
Like, I might still use your process, but you don't have anything else to teach me about it. Right? At that moment, I don't have any more questions for you because you can't answer them. So now I gotta go find the answers myself. Right? And so this is why I end up, like I said, I can be a very hard student to have because this is how my brain works. But when you reach that point where you've got a concept and you've really worked it to a point of fluency where it's not just an idea, but it's how you think. And then somebody asks you a question, you can answer that question. And the problem you have at that point in time is over answering. Like I'm the
Right.
kind of guy that if you ask me what time it is, I might give you the history of timekeeping from the 6th century on, or something like. I don't know. I actually don't know that much about timekeeping, but that's kind of like I can get really caught into rabbit holes if you ask me the wrong question at the wrong time, and being able to sort of edit that is really important. But the other thing is, like, if you're like me and you're a process or a concept learner, and you have a student who's a process learner, they're going to be just as frustrated with me as I am with a mentor who's a process teacher, right? So I had to learn how to reframe every concept I have as a process. So like, I'll give you an example. I talk a lot about social connection with my clients, right? When you're out with your dog, people say, can my dog be in front of me? Yes, as long as he's socially connected. Can he be behind me? Yes, as long as he's socially connected. Can he be 10 feet in front of me? Yes, as long as he's socially connected. I don't understand what that means. So I start trying to tell them, like, well, it means this. And they go, oh, so is it like 10 feet? I immediately know they're a process learner. So I say, you know what?
Yeah.
Let's scratch that for a moment. And I show them something different. I say, I take their leash, I have them hold one end, I hold the other end, I pull a little bit on the leash. I say, you feel that? It's just a little bit of like, you can feel me pulling, but you don't have to adjust for it. Like you're unconsciously responding to this pressure. I go, yeah. I goes, that's passive leash pressure. Right now, I'm gonna pull a little harder, and now you feel that you have to brace yourself against it, and you're actually flexing muscles. It goes, that's active leach pressure. They go, okay, do you understand the difference? Yes. Okay, cool. I said, now I want you to take your dog, walk him down to the corner and back. Anytime he does, after you feel active leash pressure, I want you to do X, Y, Z, and it will give them some drill that I have them do, whatever I think is gonna work for them. And then walk there and back, and anytime he does that, and they say, okay, and they do that, and they come back, the dog is getting a little bit better. I said, okay, every time you felt that active pressure, that's the dog checking out. That's the social connection being broken. And they go, now I understand the concept of social connection because they felt it, right? So being able to, I always say that to be a great trainer, you have to have both concept and process.
Yes.
Right? The thing is learning process can teach you concepts if they're taught properly and if you practice them with the right mindset. Teaching process or teaching concepts always makes processes more clear. right? So my goal is to get every one of my clients to understand the concepts and processes that they need to succeed. But it's a matter of where I start and how I bridge that gap. So my default is to start by explaining the concept, which I've just done with you guys, right? Illustrated that, right? I started with the concept, then I told you about the process, right? Literally, I just did that. But if I felt like you were process guys, I would have told that story in reverse.
Right.
Gotcha.
And that's, yeah, I can definitely see that. I mean, that's your natural disposition, like you said, even how you articulated that story. You know, it started out conceptually, and then you went with the actual physical indicators of how leash pressure works in your mind. And it's funny because I think it's more engineering through the military, but I'm a process learner. Like, I'm like, dude, and I have a lot of anxiety when I'm doing something new or something foreign to me. So I'm like, just tell me the steps, even with dog training. I was like, dude, tell me what I have to do to make this dog sit out, whatever. And once I alleviate the pressure of knowing the process, I can, in our industry, or for the military, we call them like techniquers, like people that can just offer a series of techniques that could work, but they don't understand why they work. They just know that this is a process, if you will. And I was one of those that would just a techniquer or a process learner. But then once I alleviate that pressure of, okay, I can make it happen, I will lose sleep. I'm like, why the fuck did that work? You know, and that's when the concept, I'm allowed to explore the concept openly with no pressure because I know I can put this facade up, I can make it work. And I think what kind of pushed me more into the concept side is when you start becoming a teacher. All that to say, and John, I know you got some stuff going on, so I'll sum it up, but I think a lot of dog trainers, the ones that stick with it and go through it, I think it's either they started out like you, Chad, conceptually, they wanted to understand their dog, whether it's a personal thing, and you can touch on that in a second. We'll give you time to think about that one on how you started with dogs. But I would venture to say it probably started with some type of curiosity. Or like me, I started out as a process learner, and then I got put up in a higher billet where I had to teach other people. And I remember one of my mentors was like, dude, you cannot keep taking the leash. And I was like, no, it's working. The team's quote unquote successful. And he was like, no, that's not success. If you cannot articulate what you're doing, then you don't need to be in this position. And I'll end it with this. One of the biggest things that I used to tell my guys, because I would get a group of guys that I would have to mentor through a trailer of dogs and teach them how to train dogs. And I would tell them, if I had to take their leash, I was like, that's not a failure on you. That is on me. And I would spend all night trying to figure out why I couldn't break it down to that individual and get them to understand conceptually what I needed them to do, even if they were going to take it as a processed, event. But why did it take that I had to remove them from the situation if it was no danger involved or anything? And that's what kind of elevated my periods of instruction. But and that's just my take on the process and concept learning, dude. I heard your podcast on it. I think you had a podcast on it. It's always refreshing to hear it live to me. So, John, I know you got something.
No, so I was just listening to the way you're explaining it, and you're exactly right. And actually, as you were explaining it, it made me think about why me and Sean work so well. Because I'm very much in reverse. I need to understand the concept first.
Mhm.
I remember we went to a Justin Rigney seminar together, and like I took these notes, recorded the entire thing. He's going over his e-collar stuff. And I remember I like was thinking so deep on the concept. I'm writing it down, I'm listening, I'm stopping, I'm taking notes. I'm thinking about why this works and what situation. And I remember I go, oh my gosh, I understand it now. I'm going to come up with this system that'll work on healing. And then I call Sean to explain it. As I'm explaining, I'm like, wait, isn't that the thing he said at the end of this? Like he taught us that process. I was like, never mind. He already taught us,
Yeah.
but I had to work in reverse to make it make sense to me. I'm like, okay, but why does this work? So I completely deconstructed it, not even meaning to, and then ended up right back at the same conclusion that he spoon fed me essentially. But until I knew why it worked, I just couldn't understand it. My question for you is, teaching so much and being in the industry so long, have you noticed a difference in the end product or the end result of trainers who are process learner versus concept learners? Or do you think it's more so like ambition and how far they want to go with it, or like knowledge?
Excuse me.
Chad has this dog, by the way. He's balancing a lot.
Yeah, I don't know, man. To be honest with you, because like when I teach other trainers, it's usually a weekend workshop, right?
Mm.
I don't really get to see how far they take what they learn from me, right? I have a couple of hours. If I get to spend 30 minutes dedicated to one person, that's a pretty good time in the workshop. So I can't really talk about where they end up. Unfortunately, I can't answer that question. But I'll go back to what I said before, and that is, I think that I don't think it matters whether you're a process or a concept learner, as long as you learn both sides of it, right? I think that's the important thing. Like whether you go through process first and then get to concept, or you go through concept first, you get to process. Like, so you're not going to be a great trainer if you don't have both. Like I keep going back to that, like because process is great until it doesn't work.
Exactly.
And then when the process fails you, you have to have the concept to fill in the gap, right? Because the concept is going to tell you why it didn't work. Like I have a few, like I don't say these things out loud that much unless I'm talking to dog trainers. But like for me, I have one thing I say all the time: pattern and relevance. Pattern and relevance. What's the pattern? What's the relevance? Right? Because as trainers, what we're doing is we're teaching the dogs to recognize relevant patterns, because that's what learning is. Ultimately, that's what learning is we don't learn patterns that aren't relevant to us, right? And we don't learn things that we can't find patterns to. So when I'm dealing with any kind of problem, whether it's like I want the dog to do something more, or I want the dog to do something less, or I want them to do it different, the questions I ask myself is, what is the pattern they've learned, and why is that pattern relevant? And I can change their behavior by changing the pattern or changing the relevance, right? And that's the way I think when someone brings me a behavior problem. Don't get me wrong, like I have a process for dealing with reactivity. Like it's streamlined now, and I know I can meet a consult and I can tell the owner in that consult step 1, step 2, step 3 with concepts why we do each step, right? It's streamlined, but doesn't work with every dog. And when it doesn't work with every dog, I go back to, why is it not working? They've either learned the wrong pattern, or the pattern means the wrong thing to them. So I've got to either adjust how I'm teaching it, or something simple like, I'm doing a lesson yesterday, and the guys, like, it drives me crazy. This drives me crazy. People don't get treat pouches. Like, they'll come in with all this gear on their dog, prong collars, e-collars, got a remote around their neck, they got a little poop bag thing hanging from their leash, and they go get a treat pouch. They go, I don't want to take that with me every time I walk. Dude, you're outfitted like Batman. Like, you're outfitted like Batman. Just get a treat. Throw all that shit away and get a treat pouch. Like,
That's one more tool, dude. Like, the fuck.
right? Like, but this guy's not got a treat pouch, and of course it's winter in Chicago, so he's got pockets, so he's putting his treats in his pockets, which is fine. I don't care. Like, you should all like. I work all my dogs without a treat pouch too, because I don't want them to become dependent on that bag hanging from my waist, right? But get a treat pouch, right? If you don't have a treat pouch, you're not going to reward the dog as often as you should, because it's a pain in the ass. Like, that's what's going to happen. Get a treat pouch. But anyway, he's not got a treat pouch. Ignores my advice. Okay, whatever. Like, again, this is another thing. As a teacher, I'm pretty like Dick Russell, one of my mentors, used to say, you don't have a right to tell people when they're happy. And in context, what he really meant was, you don't have a right to tell people when they're not happy. Right? Like, if somebody doesn't give a shit if they have to tell their dogs 3 times a sit, it's not my place to tell them they're wrong.
I'm gonna put it. I hate to interrupt. Yeah, John and I had that discovery because as trainers, you want to be as detailed. And me coming from the military, God, I remember having a dog healing it like barely. It was kind of canted, and I was about to correct the dog, and John was like, "Wait a minute." He was like, "No, that is good enough," because he knew the client, and he was like, "That is good enough for her situation." And I think it's very subjective. You cannot dictate happiness, or like you said, what is not happy for them. And just because my criteria are based on my experiences, and it has to be, this structured event, that is significantly better. And I remember I put the dog up. I was actually going to go argue with John. I was like, dude, that's dog shit. And he was like, no. He was like, that you didn't see this dog when she brought it in. He's like, the fact that he listens and he's fluid, he was like, you're going to do more damage. But I'm sorry, that just like set off a flashback, but you're 100% right. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no, that's fine. So like, if they don't want to get a tree pouch, fine. I'll tell them the best advice, and then like they'll work it. They'll do with, and then like I don't get upset when people take my advice. That's one thing that I've learned.
Mm,
Another rule for teachers, I call this Goldberg's law. I got this from Mark Goldberg, and it is never be more committed to the dog's success than the owner is.
that's good.
Right? Because
Yeah.
that will kill you. It'll break your brain. Like you'll be up nights worrying about a dog when the owner's at
Mm,
home, not giving two shits. Like, why am I losing sleep over this dog when the owner's not? Like, that's just it's just foolish, right? So like, so I'm like, whatever. So he's using his coat pocket, but he's healing the dog on the left side. We're not actually calling it heel, but the dog's falling on the left side, and he's
mhm.
got the food in his right hand.
Uh,
And every time he stops, the dog's in front of him. And I'm like, you want me to show you how to fix that? He's like, yeah. I said, switch your food to your left hand. He goes, what?
Exactly.
Just switch your food to the left hand. He's like, oh my God, that's so cool. Right? So the point is, the pattern the dog learned was he stops and I cross in front of him and get the food out of the right hand. And that's relevant because that's where the food is. Switch the hand, we switch the pattern and relevance, right? So everything is pattern and relevance. What pattern does the dog learn? Why is it relevant? You disrupt the pattern. Same guy. Oh, this was kind of maddening. So the guy, and he's a good client. Like I sound like I'm shitting all over him, and I don't mean to.
Yeah,
Like,
just don't say the breed or anything like that.
yeah,
Yeah,
no,
yeah, he
like
wore a
no,
fucking Carhartt
because
jacket. Don't describe it.
no, if he hears this podcast, I doubt he listens to dog podcasts though. Like I doubt this is his
That's actually very true, though.
right. But if he
Doesn't
does
sound
hear
like
this,
that type of crap.
yeah, if he does listen to this podcast, he will recognize this conversation for sure. Like, and I'm like I said, I'm not trying to shit on him. He's actually a pretty good
Yeah.
client. But
Mm,
I always tell people that when you get the training job, that's not the end of your sales job. That's the beginning. Every
mhm.
idea and concept I give a client, I have to sell. I get so sick of dog trainers like, well, why did you hire me, dude? Like, ask questions for sure. If you don't understand if this doesn't make sense, ask me the question because I need you to believe in what we're doing, right? Because what at the end of the day, what I'm a coach. I'm coaching you. I'm coaching your dog. I'm coaching the team. I'm not the player. I'm not on the field. That's you. That's the dog owner and the dog, right? And no team succeeds if they don't trust their fucking coach, right? So I have to convince you. If you have your doubt, you let me know because I can try to persuade you. I can give you more ammo to understand this. I do not get offended when people challenge me. That said, this was a maddening conversation, right? So, and this is like near the end of the lesson. We've been doing, oh, and this dog was doing awesome, by the way. We're working sit stays. First day we did sit stays with this dog, right? And I get out maybe the second day, but I hadn't seen this guy in like a month because I went to New Zealand for 2 weeks and then all of this stuff, right? So maybe this was a second lesson, but this dog's doing a stay. I pull up a folding chair, put it right next to the dog. I sit down, pop next to the dog. I'm petting the dog on the head. That's a good boy. That's a good boy. That's a good boy. And then I get up and walk away really fast. That dog didn't even flinch,
Yeah.
didn't even start to follow me. I was like, wow, I was impressed, very impressed, right? So we're kind of done with that. We've got about 10 minutes left in the time on the clock, and we're just filling time. Right? Like just like let's just do something. The dog has worked hard today. We don't need to add him. So like, you have any questions? And he goes, well, yeah. He goes, how do I see? He's doing really good right now because he's in a training mindset. But how do I get him to leave the house in a training mindset when we walk? Like we go for a walk. How do I get? Because if we walk out the house, he wants to pull for the first 5 minutes or so, and then he settles down. And I'm like, okay, I got a process, right? This is interesting because this guy's somewhere between process and concept, right? So I start showing the process, and I tell him, I say, first thing is the walk starts before you leave the house, right? Before you leave the house, the walk is already started. The walk starts when you grab that leash. What's he do when you grab the leash? He goes, he can be upstairs. I can grab the leash and he will fly down the stairs and come to the door. Like if he hears this collar jingle, he's right there. I'm like, okay. So the first thing we're gonna do is you're gonna pick up that leash, and if he doesn't come right away, you're gonna call him, right? But he's gonna come right away. You're gonna give him a few treats and then put your leash away and walk away. And you're gonna do this several times a day until he still comes, but he's coming for the treats, not for the walk. And then you're gonna open the door, give him a treat, and shut the door. Open the door, give him a treat, and shut the door. Open the door, give him a treat, and shut the door. He's like, okay. I said, now you're going to open the door, let him go one step outside, call him back in, give him a treat. Right. And he goes, after this, he's had enough. He goes, but to what end? I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, what's the point of this? And I'm like, what I'm doing, what you guys recognize, I hope by now from the previous section, I'm disrupting the pattern.
Exactly.
And changing the pattern, I'm changing the relevance. That's exactly all I'm doing. I'm just making it so the dog can't count on what it means when you go to the door with the leash and when you open it and when you walk out. Like, he doesn't know what it means. So he's got to be in a reflective mind, not a reactive mind when he walks through that door. And I'm trying to explain this to him, and he's giving me that look. You know, the look where it's like, I hear you. I think you're full of shit, but I hear you.
There's some skepticism there.
This isn't going to work with my dog. Right.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I'll try it. Like that kind of like just sort of shitty look. Well, I'll try it. Like, I trust you enough to try it, but I don't believe in it. And I'm like, okay, let's go to the side. So we go to the outside door, and I show him. I do it real fast, under 3 minutes. I got that dog walking out the door into the parking lot, looking at me the whole time. Right? Like, it's like, this works. This is a really good process. It works. And I think he'll have to believe her. I don't know, but like, it's maddening. But this was a case where I started with the process, and then he wanted the concept, and then he didn't even buy the concept. Right? Right? So, yeah. And like I said, I don't mind when people challenge me. I don't mind when people ask me questions. I think that's good. That also makes me a better teacher.
Yes.
Right? Like, here's an interesting little side note. When the lockdown started during COVID, I came up with the program. We called it a virtual program. I don't like that name because people think they're doing Zoom lessons or something like that. But what it is, they drop the dog off in the morning and they pick the dog up in the afternoon. The dog gets daycare with the rest of our dogs, provided they pass their temperament test and there's a social and all that stuff. But we bring the dog out, we train them, and I make a video of that training, and that video is their homework, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started, I get a lot of questions. I make the video, I get a lot of questions. They send me emails. Well, what do I do if he does this? What if I do if he does that? What about this? What about this? And so I would make notes of those questions, and I would try to preemptively answer those questions in future videos. So the upshot is this is after, but it's 4 years later, almost 5 years later. Like, now I can make a really good video that answers most people's questions without them having to ask it, because I was constantly getting feedback about how good those videos were. I can explain a concept in a way, because it's interesting when you're talking to somebody live, they'll interrupt you to ask a question. On the video, they can't. Right? They can't. So then you get feedback. Your lesson wasn't good enough because I didn't know the answer to this question. And so now I have to adjust my presentation, because it's easy when you're having the presentation in person to just answer the question and move on. Right?
Got you.
And not note it as a problem in the presentation. But when your goal is to never have to pick up the phone and talk to these people, let the video be all they need from you, then you have to get better at making your videos. So I think good students ask questions. And by the way, dogs ask questions too. This is another thing that I'm really big on. If you're teaching a dog stay and you throw a ball and they get up, they're not being disobedient. They're going, surely you couldn't mean for me to stay when you're throwing my ball. You wouldn't have thrown it if you didn't want me to go get it. Right? And they're asking, is it cool if I move now? And I go, no, you still got to stay. That's all it has to be. I don't take it personally. The dog is going, is it cool if I move now? Because I think I should be able to move now. Right? And we just go, no, you still have to move. And the other thing is, you ever teaching somebody, you tell them how to do something, like maybe how to hold the leash, or how to apply leash pressure, or put the food in your left hand, not your right hand, or something like that. And they say, okay. And then they immediately do the opposite.
Yeah.
You see that? And you go, hey, I just told you. Oh, they go, oh my God. Right? And they go, it's complicated. It's a lot to remember. I always take that moment. When they do that, when they have that moment, I go, I want you to remember this moment. Because you're trying to do what I asked you to do, right? Yes. You're trying to do it the way I told you to do it. Yes. Okay. Are you being shitty to me? No. Are you being disrespectful to me? No. You're doing your best, right? Yeah. That's going to happen with your dog.
Exactly.
You're gonna tell your dog how to do something. They're gonna do their best. And they're gonna forget. They're gonna make a mistake. I want you to be exactly as understanding and patient with them when that happens as I'm being with you right now. And that's a beautiful teaching moment when it happens. I never want to let that moment go. Like, that's one of my favorite conversations to have with somebody is, you can forget and it's okay. Your dog can forget and it's okay. right? We're not, I always say be the coach, not the cop, right? And so it's a beautiful moment. So like, I'm kind of going down a rabbit hole now. I'm sorry.
No, you're
But
good. That's
You're
what you're
good.
here for, man. We're here to. That's why we wanted you on. So you're good.
that's such a great example. Like, so, um, you just really, they're learning a physical skill and a concept at the same time. And this is the other big problem is the worst place to learn a skill is when you're trying to use it in real time.
Yeah.
You do not want the pilot of your plane crash landing the plane that you're on if he hasn't done 1,000 times in the simulator.
Right.
Right, you know what I'm saying? Like you want him to make all his mistakes in that simulator so that when it's the real plane, he knows what the hell he's doing. So people are always do this with their dogs too. They get in the heart. They don't practice with their dog. They just try and take the dog out and make it work. Right. And the
Hmm.
training room is the place where you learn the skills that you need on the street.
Yeah.
Right. For those of us who are lucky enough to have a training room, right, have the greatest amount of respect and awe for trainers who like work in like New York City and they don't have a training room where they just have to take the client's dog out on a busy New York street and get shit done.
That's
Like those
crazy.
guys, that's insane to me. Those dudes are badass. Like that is
Yeah.
like you know what I'm saying? When you can't have no control of your environment and you got to get shit done, that's amazing. Never forget that I am very privileged to work in suburban areas where even if I have to go to somebody's house, we can go in the backyard or we can go to the local park or we can go, we can find a place where we can have a somewhat sterile environment. But there are dudes who are doing that like in Manhattan and they're still getting, but I think you also have to be more heavy-handed in those situations. I think you
That's what I
can't
was.
be as
That's why I made the face, and we'll put a stake in that real quick, because yeah, because as soon as you said that, I was like, I'm well into bed. I understand how that process works, but even being heavy-handed, and John and I have had this conversation plenty of times where I started out, there's a lot of compulsive methods implemented, but I will say it's a shitty way to start a conversation with the dog, but the people that I learned it from were well versed in it. So like, on the equivalent of that Manhattan trainer at the expense of probably a considerable amount of dogs,
hmm
they probably became very fluid. And
hmm
it's one of the things that punishment, like I think it happened to I want to say I was talking to you, John, it happened to you or somebody, another trainer. But anyways, but it was notorious. I would at Lackland, I would do a lot of training with some, I call them special project dogs, but these are dogs that have been on multiple teams. I'm pretty much one of their last lines of defense at the time, and I'm working with them, and they're like, this dog won't let go of stuff. He'll come up the leash and all that. And so we do a lot of unorthodox training that apparently nobody fucking sees. So there's a lot of pre-work that goes into it. And then the moment, they see me using punishment, they're like, shit, that's how you do it. And I'm like, no, there's a lot of legwork. But what I'm getting at is even in those moments, you have to understand conceptually, deeply what you're doing if you're going to go that route. And
Yeah, I think that like for me, it's my. I could look at my whole career as a trajectory towards softness, right? Like
Mhm.
very first dog training book I ever owned was the Keeler method of guard dog training, and and that's that like, and I didn't have the benefit of instruction in the method. Like I had the book, right? And one of the interesting things is if you ever meet somebody who actually saw Bill Keeler train a dog, they will all tell you the same thing, that the method in person is not nearly as heavy-handed as the book comes across.
Really?
Yeah. And there's Mary Missouri lives, I don't know, 20-30 minutes from me, and she brought literally brought Bill Keeler here to Elgin to do a workshop back in like 1970s, right? There's a picture of her and Bill Keeler working, I think it's an Irish Wolfhound. And she tells a story about how Bill worked with a dog and he mentioned giving a correction, how he gave the dog a correction that fixed the dog. And she goes, I didn't see you give the correction. He said, that's because I did it right.
Yeah.
The question then comes down to people who are reading the book, because the book reads really, really harsh.
Yes, it does.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying there aren't problematic things in the method, because there are, right? But the question that comes up among people who knew Bill Keeler and read his book is, why did he write the book in that tone when that's not how he trained? And the answer that most people give to that question is, well, you know how it is. If you tell a dog owner to correct their dog, and they go,
That's what I know exactly
right?
what you're talking. Yes.
And so they say he wrote it that way so that if he told them that, they would give a very stern, or give an effective correction. If he says, lift the dog all the way off the ground, they might give a clear. But I don't think that's true. And the reason I don't think that's true is because Tony Anchetta, who worked for Bill Keeler, who lived in his house for a time, who to this day, if you want to call yourself a Keeler trainer, you have to get his approval. He's the guy. He told me that when Bill wrote the first book, he never expected that anyone who wasn't in one of his obedience classes would ever buy it. So he didn't write it assuming that he wouldn't be there to coach them. So I think he was a bit of a troll, like, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That doesn't add
Because
up. I'm like, why write the book then?
because if you look at the first chapter of the book, he's got this whole thing about what he calls humaniacs, which are the people who stand by watching his group class going, oh my, I wouldn't do that. And there's a whole chapter called Fables and Foibles where he is just kind of making fun of those people. And I think he kind of wrote the book to trigger them. That's kind of what I think. That's my theory. I haven't.
Yes, yeah, I never looked at it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But here, while I'm talking about it, I want to, I cut my teeth on that book, and that book was my Bible for the first couple of years of my dog training career, and it allowed me to solve problems that other trainers in my area could not. Like, there is some value in it. I don't mean to say that there's not, but there's a philosophical problem with the work in the book. There's a couple of them. The first one is that Keeler sort of believed that the dog was trying to get away with disobedience, and your job was to not let them, right? There was no concept of a dog who wanted to work or getting the dog to want to work. The idea was you have to do it, and you can remove that from the book and get some good stuff from it if you take it. You can soften it a great deal and make it effective, because that's what I did for my group classes for a long time. I just did a softer version of Keeler. But the problem that I run into now, the reason why I've used very few things from the book anymore. Like, I don't teach any obedience commands the way he says to in the book. None. I will use a variation of his right about turn for healing, for troubleshooting down the line, but I don't start there anymore. And it's a lot softer. But the philosophical issue I have with the book is, if you go through the process, especially if you learn it from somebody who worked with Bill Keeler, like Tony Anchetta, what you'll notice is that at no point in that process is the dog guessing. The dog is never responsible for solving any puzzles. Everything is spelled out to them in very, very clear definitions. This is how you turn this pressure off. This is what you do when I stop. This is what you do when I say sit. This is what you do when I say down. This is where you walk next to me. Everything is explained to the dog very explicitly. And when the dog guesses, he's usually making a mistake, and he gets a correction for guessing. So what ends up happening is the whole process is to teach the dog not to make choices, but to do what he's been trained to do. And so you end up in a situation where, if the dog isn't sure what to do, he will default at sit, because sit is always a safe behavior. And so you have this dog that's really well behaved, but it's not that different from the trainers who do perpetual place. It's more gentle, I think, if it's done correctly. It's kinder, but at the end of the day, it's still, the idea is the dog who doesn't do anything wrong. And that's not what we're looking for from our dog. I remember the first time I learned about shaping. I had a dog. I tried to practice shaping with her. I couldn't get anywhere with her. She wouldn't offer a behavior, and I didn't. It wasn't until like 2 years ago that I realized that the reason I couldn't get her off her behaviors was I had systematically taught her never to offer behaviors.
Exactly. Yeah.
I taught her systematically to do what she had been trained to do in every circumstance. Of course, she's not going to offer behaviors. She's gotten her ass whooped for crossing behaviors, for guessing wrong too many times. And that's where I have to part ways with the method, right? So that's why I don't teach things. I don't mold behavior very often. Now, here's the couple of things I will say about the Keeler method in its defense. I have very mixed feelings towards this approach. Like I'm very conflicted. Bill Keeler did something that was amazing, and that is this. He wrote a book that you could give to somebody who had no experience with dogs whatsoever. If they read the book and they followed the steps, they would come out with a reasonably trained dog at the end of the day. That's pretty impressive. That's actually really impressive, right? Just I was talking about how hard I work to try and make videos where people can follow along. But putting in written word, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive. And the other thing is, there are times where I can get nothing else to work. Like I have a dog who's not food motivated. I got a dog who's not socially motivated. I got a dog who's not interested in anything I have to offer. He doesn't want to play with me. He doesn't want to talk to me. He doesn't want to have a conversation with me. He just doesn't care. I start doing long line work the way Bill Keeler, the way Tony Anchetta taught me, which is not in the book, unfortunately. The book's description of long line work is different from what they actually do. But I start doing that, and within a week, I have that dog cooperating.
Mm.
And so there is some value in there for sure. Like I had a dog not that long ago, right before I left for New Zealand. I was working with this dog who was from a shelter. Dog had zero social connection. He wasn't like, I don't like people. He liked people. He's fine. He come up, let you pet him. That's good. But he didn't like people more than he liked exploring the environment. He didn't like people more than he liked sniffing. He didn't like treats more than he liked sniffing. He didn't like play more than he liked sniffing. He liked all of those things, but he was more happy to explore his environment without your input. Like he didn't want to find fun with you. That was second nature to finding fun on his own, right? So, how do you work with that dog? You can be real heavy-handed, or you can spend time building trust, and or you can put the dog on a long line and give them a lot of freedom with a little bit of restraint, and you keep them moving without asking anything from them, but insisting that they move with you, insisting they don't move too far away from you. And eventually you become relevant because you are the moving center of his environment. He can't get more than 15 feet away from you. So where you are is relevant to him. And that starts to make you important. So there is some value there for sure. And there are dogs I have helped that I would not have been able to help without my foundation in Keeler. So I'm not going to be as aggressive towards that method as a lot of people are. Early on in dog training conversations, I did say that I thought every professional trainer should learn the Keeler method properly from somebody who knows it, and that had an unintended consequence.
Yeah.
I assumed that everybody who was listening to me and Jay would be able to see the parts of that system that were valuable and see the parts of the system that didn't match with that ethos, and I was wrong about that. A lot of people that I sent to learn about it as a supplement became very dedicated to the method itself. And it was a little heartbreaking for me, to be honest with you, because you cannot see the dogs the way I do and see dogs the way Jay does, and look at that and go, that's the best way I can do it, right? I don't think you can, and that made me really sad. So I'm not going to say that anymore. Like if you want to research it, I think you should, but keep in mind that these things, I didn't know how to express what I just expressed about guessing then, right? We want dogs to be confident in what's going on and what they're doing, and want the dogs to feel good about the work they're doing, and want the dog engaged. Like the dog who wants to will always be more reliable than the dog who has to, right?
Yeah,
It's
for
just that
sure.
simple. So yeah, so that's my rant
Exactly.
on Keeler.
Exactly what you just touched on. So I think as you're explaining, you would recommend the killer method, and you'd see the people who followed that to a fault. I think that's where they became obsessed with the process and not so much the concept. And
Good
that's
point.
something I tell a lot of my clients is if you correct the dogs, I see a lot of trainers do this, correct effort, and you're going to kill exploration. So when you need a dog to do a
Oh,
more
I like that.
complex behavior, thank you.
I'm gonna steal that.
Yeah, feel free. But you're going to kill the effort when we need them to do more complex tasks and do different things. Now the dog is second guessing, well, should I try this? And one of
Right.
my favorite things to see, started a program last year, a train the trainers course for my business at the time. I only got to run 2 students through it. But I remember when one student in particular, I started out with a process. I said, hey, I'm going to teach you these steps so you can effectively train a dog. And then I would give him a different kind of dog and kind of let him say, well, hey, this is slightly different. How do we adjust here? And he ended up getting a sport dog from us. And I think one of the coolest transitions was watching him as he had to do more complex behaviors. He worried less about the process and the steps. And then he began to ask, well, why? How does the dog feel? And he started to take all these other things into consideration. So I feel like what you're saying there, when they get stuck to one method or they follow this to a T, it's because they're still in that process development and they have not gotten to the concept stage yet.
You know what? You just gave me a big piece of my own puzzle, right? So I always tell people that when I started training dogs, dog trainers didn't network like they do now. Like the other dog trainer down the road was competition, not a colleague, right? And we just didn't share ideas. There was none of that, right? Like it was like every man for himself. And so when I got stuck with a dog, I didn't have a mentor. You got to understand that when I started this, I did not have a mentor, right? So I got into dog training because I got conned by a fucking carny. And I'm not joking. I'm not joking. It's crazy. So I was, in my early 20s. My life plan was to become a rock star, right?
Okay.
And I was dedicated. Like I had this band, and we rehearsed several hours a day, 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week. Like we meant it. We were not like just like sitting around getting high all the time and saying we're gonna be a band one day. We worked hard, and we were 80% original material, and even our cover songs were different than the ones like they were our own arrangements. Like we worked hard, and we were very like I always say I was the least talented member of the band. Like the singer we had was the best rock and roll voice I had ever heard in my life, and still one of the best I've ever heard. We had a great guitar player. Drummers were a problem. We kept losing drummers, but like we meant it. We thought we were gonna hit big, right?
Hmm.
And I just needed a way to earn money that allowed me to practice, right? You get a 9 to 5 job. Now we can't practice. Now we can't gig if I'm working on the weekends. So I needed a way to find money. And this was back in the day when you look for a job by open up the newspaper, right? We're talking early 1990s. So I open up a newspaper and there's a guy running an ad, earn big bucks training dogs. And he's doing this free seminar down at one of the hotels downtown. So I'm like, okay, I don't I my girlfriend at the time took me to that seminar, and he was selling a course. Get this, guys, a 4-day course to make you a professional dog trainer. 4 fucking days to make you a professional dog trainer.
Can only imagine what you
$100.
saw.
$100 with
Woo!
1994 or $1993. That was a lot of money, and I didn't have a fucking job, right?
All
My
right,
first,
Chad, don't self-incriminate yourself.
no,
We don't want
but
to know
that's
how
okay.
you got the money
No, that's okay because
from this method.
he
Yeah.
came prepared. He had partnered with a credit company
Oh, wow,
in New
dude. Of
York, so I could get in $1,500 debt with interest to pay for this 4-day course to make me a professional dog trainer.
course.
And like he told us all sorts of, this was before the internet. You couldn't verify this shit, right? He told me that, you know, he told us that, the movie Cujo, that he trained all those dogs. He was telling stories about the set. We used 7 dogs in the and I ate all of this shit because I was a young kid, right? I was a young dumb kid. I bought all of this shit, and so I signed up for this course. And I got home after I signed my paper to sign my signature paper. My dad was livid. My dad was so mad because I had to ask them because I needed to pay when I showed up for the course. I had to pay like $250 down, right? I didn't have it. I asked my parents for that, right? And I showed my dad the contract, and I said, "Look, if I don't show up, I don't have to pay anything." He goes, "It doesn't say that here in the contract. It doesn't say that if you don't show up, you don't have to pay." Which that scared me, right? Turns out my dad was wrong. Contract law, if you don't receive consideration, you don't have to give consideration, right? So if he doesn't teach me anything, he doesn't. But I didn't know this at the time. I'm like, oh, now I have to do it, right? So I'm stressing out about it, and a commercial comes on TV. This was like a life changing moment. Some dumb commercial for a place called ITT Technical Institute, which they think they still exist down in Texas.
Yeah, I
I'm
was
not
gonna say I
sure.
remember those
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but this one commercial, it ended with the line that said, "People who say they never had a chance never took a chance." And I went, "Oh shit, I gotta do it. I gotta do it." So I got the money from my mom and dad, and I went to this thing. Basically, I got 2 things from this guy that were valuable. One is I got the confidence, not the ability, but the confidence to take people's money to train their dogs, and I got the recommendation for the Keeler book, right? And that was all I had, right? Now here's so I'll come back to that. Like, but so the point is that book for the first 2 years was the only resource or the library. I would go to the library and look things up. So, John, the point I'm getting at is what you just told me. One of the reasons why I am so comfortable solving my own problems is that's all I could do. Like, literally, I had to go to the library and find out, and I had to be able to understand concepts to take them and apply them in other situations because the dog I was looking at wasn't doing the same thing as the dog in the book or in the magazine or whatever. So here's the end of my story about the guy who sold me this stuff. Like years ago, like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, maybe more. No, probably more than that now. I got curious about that guy, right? Like, so I started trying to look him up, started trying to Google him, right? And I finally find his name in a magazine called Circus Gazette. So Circus Gazette was this magazine for carnies, and somebody went and put all of their back issues online in PDF form, and it was searchable. So I finally tracked this guy down, and I find ads in Circus Gazette telling carnies to stay away from this guy, telling carnies
My
to
God,
stay
dude.
away
That's like the
from this
bottom of
guy.
the barrel, man. Like
He's selling horses he doesn't own.
oh
He's
my
just
God.
all
What
stuff.
the fuck?
This guy is just scum, right? And the last I could find, the last message I could, last information I could find about him was that he was in a permanent vegetative state in a hospital in Florida after a severe car accident. So,
If
so
that's what you want
yeah,
to call it, an accident. I'm
yeah. Well, I
sure.
don't know. Yeah,
I'm
but
sure it's
like,
sold one
But
dog
didn't
training
get their
package
horse.
too many, and fucking
yeah.
I
man.
got one question. How many people were in this class with you? Like, how many
There
people
were
did you
probably
get?
about 10 people. 10
Jeez, that's
people.
pretty good. Damn.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty fucked.
So he drove around the country in this RV. So he'd sell his little summers and he'd come back a month later and do the course with his RV, right? And we are in this like public parking lot for the course. And somewhere I might still have it. I don't know, a VHS tape he recorded. He did one of the things he gave us. He would sit with it with a little microphone, like a little bitty fucking lavalier mic, and he'd narrate while we were training dogs, right? Like
Yeah.
with a camcorder, right? And oh that boy that trainer that I was in that video, like that I would whip that dude's ass if he touched my dog. Like I would whoop that dude's ass if he touched my dog. The way I was handling that dog, and it was my own dog, I think, in the video, and it was terrible. It was terrible, but I didn't know any better. Like I said, but I thought I was good enough to be a professional. I started taking people's money, and of course, I found out pretty quickly I needed to learn a lot more, and that started my journey. This is one of the reasons why I'm a little bit like trainers love to shit on people who are not ready to be working yet. Like trainers, that's a big thing. Is like, you shouldn't even be training dogs yet. Like, and I hear that. Like I understand and sympathize with that 100%. But if the wrong person had said that to me back then, we wouldn't be having this conversation now,
Yeah,
right? And there's a lot of dog trainers and dogs who got help from me that would not have gotten it, right? So I always say you can't gatekeep because we'd say, oh, you should go back and learn more. And my response is, well, they already didn't do that.
well that's the thing
Yeah.
though. Like you said, and I sympathize with that in the fact of there's there's a lot of information, and Chad, you can attest to this probably more than us. Obviously, you've been doing this longer, and it's very relevant. But like information only takes you so far. Just like you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, conception only takes you so far. After a while, you have to implement practice. And so, like even the narrative circling back, like with the guy with the dog, you were telling him, I want you to have the same sympathy that you had, you know, trying to understand my instruction with your dog, pass that along to your dog. But what
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting at is, um, we pretty much shit on like new trainers making attempts and every minute mistake. And just like if I really wanted to do like some deep soul searching into this, what you just said, I could probably find some type of VHS with you training a dog like that. And like, that's where you started. But my thing is, there's a very probably minute amount of people that would go into something wanting to quote unquote beat their dog, without intention. So like with the Keeler method, yes, people took it literal, and John kind of touched on it, and we've had that conversation where, is the process, does it produce results? And like we talked about before we even started recording, some processes, unfortunate as they can be, they do produce the good enough result. And is the pitfall of doing that. And I struggle with that in the military. And that's why I said, I was kind of, when you said Keeler is trolling, I was like, I didn't get that out of it. I kind of sympathize in some respects because in the military, we have to do the same thing. There are plenty of dogs that I've trained that if it was left to me, I would not train it that way. But under the constraints, because we are a consumer-based system, where that dog will not only work for me, it has to be laterally trained to be effective to somebody else. And their procedure, their basic handler scores procedures are predicated off of a variance of Keeler method, the military's interpretation. That's how I found out about it.
Yeah. I think Keeler started the Army training program, the Canine Corps. Like
I want to say I don't want to say 100%, but he definitely had a strong influence. Whether it was direct or indirect, I can't actually recall. But that's where I learned about the book and all that. And so, on one hand, you can say yes. Now, what we know now currently and all that, it is more or less. There's some things that I would not apply. However, on a grand scale, it does have a lot of merit because it does get the job done. These same dogs are saving people in deployments. They're still doing, at the expense of their emotional, gratification, if you will, and all that. But there's some merit to it. But at the end of the day, would I personally do some of the stuff? No. But have I prepped my dogs to accept it? That's the thing. To the pre-work, it didn't start out Keeler, but then at the end, it still looks very Keeler-esque. The application, you could pop the dog on a choke chain and it will react appropriately. But the way that it was conditioned is a lot different than what, the book would prescribe. And so, but I like how you put that in there, man. Like it flows well. But one of the questions I had, when you run into those situations where, I guess dealing with clients, and we'll tie it back towards the pet trainer, dealing with clients that don't want to take your advice and don't accept it, what are some of the ways that you kind of work around that as far as knowing how to adapt to what their learning ceiling is going to be, if you will?
So again, the first thing is George Cockrell, and you guys might want to try and get George on here. He's a good guy.
Okay, I'm unfamiliar with him.
Yeah, he's in Maryland. He just had heart surgery yesterday, so it might be the time before he can come on here. But he's definitely he's a third generation dog trainer, and he's got good stories, and he's a good guy, genuinely a good guy. He says people get a dog because they want to have a friend. They call us because they don't want their friend to be an asshole.
Okay, yeah, I've heard something similar, but
yeah, and that's my starting point, right? So my goal with every client is I want to get the dog trained to a point where if this was the worst the behavior got, they would not have called me in the first place. I don't necessarily have to eliminate the behavior to do that. I just have to alleviate it, right? Like nobody ever calls a dog because once in a while he looks across the street and goes, and then keeps walking. No one's ever going to call the dog trainer for that. Right. So the first thing I do is I give the owner permission to decide where they want to compromise. It's super important to me. Like dog trainers have a higher standard, but everybody who owns a dog has to compromise. Right. None of us have the perfect dog. Right. No trainer in the world has a perfect dog. I don't expect that from my dog. I make accommodations for my dog all the time because there's things I don't feel like working on. Right? There's things that I'm okay with this level of accommodation. It doesn't interfere with my life. And I give my clients that same permission. And that's the first thing because that alleviates a lot of pressure, right? If they go, and I tell my clients all the time too, like I will never ask you to do something you're not comfortable doing. If you say, I don't want to do that, I'm going to say, okay, let's try a different option. Now, when they say I don't want to do that, I say, okay, we have to talk about expectations now because you've just changed the expectations. Like, I am not a force-free trainer. I don't pretend to be. I wish I could be, right? I don't know for certain if it's possible to do everything I want to do in the time frame I need to do it without using any unpleasantness. I don't know if that's possible or not. I know that I can't do it. I know that I'm not good enough to do that. And so I try and use as little unpleasantness as I can. If an owner says they want to do no unpleasantness, I usually say, look, on a long enough timeline, I think we can solve this problem with no pressure, with no unpleasantness. I think we probably can if we have enough time. I don't know if any of us lives that long. I don't know if we have that much time to make that work. So we have to be realistic. And what usually happens is by the time I suggest that somebody, so there's two types of people are going to push back. Like one is, and honestly, I get more pushback about being soft, to be honest with you. I very rarely get pushback about using the leash correction or a squirt bottle or something like that. Most people are totally okay with that. Like they're totally okay with that. And most people want that. They expect they're going to come in and we're going to tell them how to punish the behavior they don't want. Right. And I start talking about biological fulfillment and let's teach this other thing and let's make your dog an optimist and all this stuff. And they get it, but they don't, that's not where their head is. Right. So I get that a lot where people want to get more heavy handed earlier. Right. Like it's much easier to deal with somebody who doesn't want to punish the dog because I can just say, okay, we're just going to take longer. But when people are like, you got to tell the dog no. Like, so for example, I'm real big on classical counter conditioning. So when I have a reactive dog, I put food in his face. And everyone always asks me the same question. Aren't you rewarding the wrong behavior? And
No.
nope, I'm not rewarding shit. I'm changing how the dog feels about the situation he's in. Right? Like I usually don't swear to my clients that way, but we're on a
Yeah,
podcast and
no,
it's like
that's yeah.
9:30 at night, so whatever. But no, I'm not rewarding anything. I'm changing how he feels about this. I'm changing the relevance of this pattern. Again, pattern and relevance, right? I'm changing the relevance of this pattern. I'm changing what he expects to happen when he sees another dog. But a lot of people don't want to do that. A lot of people push back on that. And usually I can show them. Usually I can show them with a few reps that the dog is getting better. And they go, oh, okay. Now there's some sort of scripts I use for that, right? I tell them before we start that I want them to be looking at 3 criteria: frequency, intensity, and duration. Like when I bring this dog in the room, how often does the dog react? How intense is the reaction and how long does it take us to calm him down afterwards? Because these are the factors we're looking at. And maybe the dog's going to pop off every time I open that door with the dog on the other side of it. Maybe every single time he's going to pop off. But I promise you, by the end of a 15-minute session, he's popping off less intense and for shorter duration. And they can see progress. If people can see progress, they believe in you. If they can't see progress, they don't. And you know what? If at the end of session I'm not seeing if the end of a session I'm not seeing any progress, then maybe we do need to do something, add a little bit of a negative element to it. And again, I start low. My first layer of correction for most dogs is a squirt bottle filled with water. I don't put lemon juice or vinegar or anything like that. And it's just water. Just a squirt in the face with tap water. And that's usually enough to interrupt the wrong behavior long enough to reward the right behavior.
Yeah, and
Right.
or go ahead.
So, but it really is about meeting the owner where they are at, right? Like if we're going to walk together, I have to meet you, right? And if I'm making you meet me, that's not the right way to go. That's not, you're asking me for help, and that means you don't know where you're going, right? So like if I call a buddy because my car's broken down, and he's like, yeah, I will change that tire. Can you meet me at the corner? No, I can't because my car's not going anywhere. You have to come meet me, right?
Yeah.
When they call me up, they're stuck. So I have to go to where they are and bring them with me. So like I try to just listen to where they're coming from and pay attention to their complaints and address them. And being as I came from a compulsion background, it is very easy for me to understand the mindset of somebody who wants to be compulsive or be more compulsion based, I should say, and explain to them how I got where I am. Like my switch from compulsion to more reward-based training has nothing to do with the ethics of compulsion or the ethics of reward-based. It has to do with the efficacy of the training and the attitude of the dog when I'm done with them. Right? If I thought that being heavy-handed was the way to make the most well-rounded, happy, livable dog, that's what I would still be doing. I just don't fucking believe that anymore. Right? I believe that if we treat dogs like beings we love. And like J-Jack has this great thing, love wants for, not from. Most trainers want from the dog. I want the dog to sit. I want the dog to come when called. They don't care about what they want for the dog. And most owners want for the dog, not from the dog, right? And if I can frame it that way, I can get most people on board with what I want. Like I tell people this a lot of times, I say this in my consults is you've come to me because you have a problem, right? You're here because you have a problem. And I'm going to tell you right now that you have a problem because your dog has a problem. Now, there are people out there who will offer to solve your problem without solving your dog's problem. I am not that guy. What I want to do is I want to solve your problem by solving your dog's problem, and I'm going to need your help to do that. So if you help me solve your dog's problem, we will solve your problem. And nobody has ever said, no, fuck that. Fuck that dog. I just want my problem to stop. Never happened.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah.
So it's like, and these are scripts almost. Like I can say that the same way to 10 people a day without any effort. But it didn't start out as a script. It's just I've gotten used to telling that story so much that it's become sort of a codified thing, which is I think how concepts become processes.
Exactly.
Right.
I was about to throw that in there. It's like that's the concept that came from a genuine place. It had a lot of success, and now it's a why deviate from a successful process
Exactly.
that leaves everybody feeling well. It meets your agenda that you want for your client to alleviate the pressure and everything else that they're having with their dog, and it's channeled through the dog. And so I like that.
And so to finish answering the question though, when it comes down to it, and I've tried everything I can,
right,
and they're still not sure, they still seem to be reluctant, I will just say, trust me for a couple of weeks. Give it a try. If it doesn't work, we'll do something different. And by that time, I've usually got enough rapport with them that they'll grant me that leeway, right? But that often means they're not actually like the things where I run into most trouble is when it's the things that require like what they do in the training room or the training, when they're practicing. That's all good. It's how they live with the dog that we run into trouble.
Oh my
right?
gosh, we're gonna start another hour conversation.
Like it's like the dog's jumping up on them, right?
Mhm.
And the solution, my spiel on that is, listen, there's two ways you can make sure a gambler stops gambling. Only two. One way is you make the odds so stacked against them that they never think they can win. The other way is you make losing cost too much for them to risk it.
Exactly. Yeah, I know.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? So if you're consistent about never rewarding the dog for jumping up, you're taking the odds against them. The more consistent you are about not rewarding the jumping up and redirecting or whatever you do, the more consistent you are about that, the softer you can be.
Mm-hmm.
If you are not capable of being consistent, you're going to have to increase the cost of losing.
Exactly.
Those are the only two options you have. So you get to decide, as my client, if you're going to work hard to be really consistent, live with jumping, or be more heavy-handed. Those are your three options. You accept and I don't care if they go, you know what, I don't care if my dog jumps up, fine. Not my problem.
Yeah, it's not jumping on me, so sounds good. Yeah.
And my dog jumps on me. I don't care if she jumps on me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care at all. I like it.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
So why am I going to tell my clients they shouldn't like it? Right. If they're like, I don't mind my dog jumping on me, cool. We don't have to talk about that. Let's move on to something else. Right. Because again, I want the dog to fit in their lifestyle, not my ideal of what their lifestyle should be.
Mhm.
Within reason, right? Like like when I teach people how to shut the play window with enough, I always have to give them this lecture that like that doesn't mean that you don't have to play with your dog anymore. Like it's only fair to use that enough window when the dog has played enough, when that drive has been fulfilled or at least appeased.
Yeah.
Right. Like so, yeah, it gets complicated, but I think trainers lose a lot of energy or you lose a lot of sleep over trying to get the dog to live up to an ideal that the owner just doesn't care about. They're just not interested in that. Right.
I remember Sean taught me to teach a dog to focus heel with the ball because I'd always use food and like I was like so excited about this German Shepherd Riley. I remember it like I have every video of every step of the way. It was a beautiful focus heel he would offer. Like he wanted to be in that position at all times. And I remember doing the go home. I said, okay, tell him to heel. and they told him to heel, and they started walking before he got in position. Like, he's offering the behavior, but they're not paying him for it. And they're like, oh, yeah, he's right beside us. And I'm like, oh, yeah, but if you reward him, like, while his head's up, or if he looks at you. But their criteria, like, they were just glad they could walk their dog down the road. And I was like, okay, that was my expectation. I'm not the one that has to live with the dog. And I can't place my wants on them.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's like, so, but often you can change their mind by framing things differently. Like, for example, I'm real bad. I don't like when a dog, stops and is turned 45 degrees to me. I want that dog. I don't have to be like AKC level parallel. Like, I'm not like that, but I don't want the dog. I want the dog lined up properly. But the reason for that, this is something I got from Tony Anchetta, who is the Keeler guy. Like, what is the purpose? What is the practical purpose of heel? Like, why do we teach dogs to heel? Like, what is like? It's not so they can walk nicely on a leash, because you can have a dog walk nicely on a leash. It's not healing.
Exactly.
Why do we need heel? What do we use it for?
To limit what they're engaging with the environment, usually.
No. Sean, you know the answer I'm going for?
Probably not the answer you're going. Well, mine is more of a tactical thing. I'm thinking something's probably totally different. But like operationally, ours is, it's easier to have a dog right beside you because you have no idea what kind of environment you're going to engage in.
That's very, very much very similar.
Okay,
like
I don't know how that translates to civilian. Pat, I haven't thought about that, but I would imagine narrow spaces, close traffic, small sidewalk.
Walking your dog through a crowd.
And that's what I was going to say. And my experience was through an airport. That's what I was about to say.
Yep.
We teach it predominantly, and that's how I got through my third working dog, who's super aggressive. And Xerxes, I've told John this story plenty of times, but that's how we got through it. But he had a very in tune focus handle that I developed, and it was intrinsic to him. But he also had a separate command for focus and straight up and ignore the world. I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, it's okay. I was training dogs for probably 20 years before anyone told me why we heal dogs. It was just part of training, right? Mm-hmm. And Tony Anchetta said, he goes, we use heel so we can walk our dog through a crowd without him or his leash being a trip hazard to others.
All right.
Right? If the dog's in front of you, somebody who's not paying attention can trip over the leash. Dog's too far to the side, somebody not paying attention can trip over the leash. Dog's too far behind you, somebody not paying attention can trip over the leash, or your dog. Dog is right next to you. They shouldn't be that close to you anyway, right? So that's the practical purpose. So then when you frame it that way, what happens when you sit your dog at a heel and they turn 90 fucking degrees?
Yeah. No, yep.
They're a trip hazard, right? So I actually prefer a dog who tucks their butt in behind me.
Mm-hmm.
Which would lose me points in the AKC obedience trial. But that is the spirit of the command. If he's tucked in behind me, nobody's tripping over him there. So I would prefer the mistake in the other way. But I have to explain that to my owners. You're walking on the sidewalk. You see somebody coming. You want to set your dog to anchor them. You don't want to take up more of your sidewalk because you want to be a good neighbor.
Yeah,
that's and they go, that makes sense. Right? Because you can't get people to clean that up unless they understand why.
Yep.
Right? They will not work on that.
Yeah. Huh? I said you're using concepts to your leveraging concepts. You can't say anything.
Yes,
exactly. You know, a deeper level of training.
Yeah. But it's crazy that I was almost, if it wasn't 20 years, it was close to 20 years in this game before anyone made that clear to me. I was just doing it because that's what we fucking did. You heel. Heel is the first command I taught, right? And so to me, heel was about attention. You teach heel to get the dog's attention because you say you can't teach any living being until you have their attention. But now I get their attention by tossing food all over the room. They're like, hey, you're interesting. You're throwing food around. Or you got toys, right? Like I don't have to, old school heel was compulsive. The only safe place on the leash was in this position because that's the only way that's the only place where you can predict the next move I'm going to make. So it was just really crazy. But nobody, Jack will talk about, that for every exercise, there's a goal and a point, and those aren't necessarily the same thing. Like he will always say, what's the goal of tug? And people will say, to burn out drive or to build cooperation. Because no, that's the point, or that's the point. The goal is to get possession of the toy. The goal of the game, that's how you win the game, is getting the toy, right? And when you play the game, you have to be aware of what the point is, but you got to play the goal, right? And so when I was doing obedience, I was very much aware that if I thought he ought to have attention, I was going for the point, but I didn't understand the goal. The goal was to be able to walk my dog through a crowd.
Right.
But my point was I wanted the dog's attention. And like I said, almost 20 years in the game before anyone ever said that to me. Why are we not teaching people this? Like, why should I have to learn that sort of almost as a throwaway line from a trainer from the previous generation? And how many trainers from the next generation won't ever know that?
It reminds me of this. I've told, me and Sean have talked about this, but this like fable or story where a new commander took over a base and there was two soldiers standing in front of a bench. So that commander called the previous commander and he goes, I don't know. They told me, they were doing it when I got there, and I'll skip some of the steps. So basically he calls 3 or 4 generations back until it's like this old retired general. He goes, sir, they said you started this. Why did you keep him next to the bench? And he goes, well, is the damn paint still wet?
A little bit of a side note. My dad was in the Army when I was growing up. Eventually he retired and went to the National Guard. He told me that whenever we went to a new post, there would be on the desk at the time, every time we went to the new post, there would be a sign on his desk that said there's no classified material in this desk. And my dad would take that sign off and put it in the drawer. And somebody would inevitably say, you got to have that there. He goes, why? He goes, regulations. And my dad says, show me the regulation. And no one ever could. No one ever could. But people get really upset about him for removing that sign because they believed there was regulations. And it's just somebody started doing that and somebody said it's regulations and everybody just believed it. Nobody bothered to check it. So your story just reminded me of that.
The narrative of the military. There's so much stuff that I'm like, why are we doing this again? And they're like, there's no validated answer for why. And that goes back to the concept. I've gotten in a lot of disputes and probably close to trouble about questioning why. And I'm like, this makes 0 sense. And offering very validated solutions that, but anyways, I digress. You just triggered a memory. Because I'm still living in it.
We don't need to go into a slam of military discipline and military life.
No. It's not that. I mean, they're going to do what they're going to do regardless. Or I should say,
they're committed to the process.
Yeah. No, it's fine. But no, this has been good, man. We're touching about an hour 34.
Yeah.
But we'll start wrapping things up. I know John and we had a list of questions. So you're going to make the list of, it may be 6 months from now, Chad, but we're going to have you back on, dude.
No, man, anytime, man. I've had a blast tonight. You guys are fun, man. I like you guys a lot.
It was good speaking
John,
with you, man.
I'll leave it up to you, John, real quick. Do you have any, like a last question that we can ask and
I think we kind of, well, I said there's one topic I saw, me and Sean were talking about it. You posted your e-collar course, and you were saying it's different, and your approach to it. Did want to touch on that just a little bit, and kind of what makes it different. I know you said it's on the Patreon. If you want to shout out your Patreon.
Yeah, I don't even know them, but I don't even know the name of my Patreon. I'm terrible at this shit.
And you're just like me, dude. All right, that makes me feel better. I can't even remember my own Instagram name, and it's like my name.
It's your name.
Yeah, I know, dude.
Yeah,
I'm like, yeah. But
yeah. So my Patreon is, hold on, I can tell you, and it's a cheap one. It's only $5 a month. So I'm not trying to get rich off of it. But let's see. You can probably look at under just my name, Chad Mackin. Looks like, I think it's something to bark about is the name of the Patreon, but just my name, Chad Mackin. You can find it, I think. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. How do I put this? I introduce my e-collar just like I introduce a yes and a good marker. And just like I teach a leash. So the process, essentially, one thing I do about teaching markers that I think is unique to me too, that I don't see anybody else doing, that I sort of discovered on my own, is before I teach the yes marker, I build curiosity. Right. So most people go, click, treat, until dog starts responding to the treat. What I do is I go treat until dog goes, what the fuck is with this guy throwing treats all over the place?
Yes.
What's this all about? And when I see them start thinking about it, why is he throwing treats? That's when I start adding that yes marker. Because now it's a clue to the puzzle they're trying to solve, right? So I have their interest already. So I do the same thing. I go tap, treat, tap, treat, tap, treat, right? Which probably isn't that unique, but starting with that curiosity, I think is. But then again, it's not contingent on anything the dog does, just like a clicker, right? Like just treat, treat whenever. And then I start marking when the dog looks at me, tap when they look at me, treat, tap but then I start moving away from the dog, and then I'm rapid tapping, like I'd be giving a good, 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 right? Or a little guiding leash pressure to complement what they're already doing. So what they're learning is they're learning that the job is to turn the collar off, but they're not learning that the job is to turn. In words, they're not learning to turn the collar off because it's unpleasant. They're learning to turn it off because that's the game. That's the game. Catch me, turn the collar off, win the food. Right. So, and here's the cool part about why I think it's so important. If we want to have a conversation about the ethics of e-collars, now there is a school of thought among both force-free trainers and certain balance trainers that electrical stimulation is always aversive. Always aversive, right? There is this idea that is biologically that a dog will avoid electricity. Now, if that were true, what happens when I start tapping the dog when they look at me? What would we expect to see? We
Avoidant.
expect to see them look at me less, right?
Yeah, you would.
But they don't. They don't. As a matter of fact, often we see it increase looking at me because now the game has more definition and more interest. Now it's a puzzle to solve, and now they're engaged in the puzzle. So if we want to start talking about whether e-collars are inherently aversive, this approach sort of, I think, for me, puts a nail in the coffin, right? You can't say that it's all because trainers use the word aversive, I think, in a really broad way. And I got in an argument with a guy, not argument, I got in discussion with a guy about this not that long ago, that he said anything the dog doesn't like is aversive. And I'm like, what does aversion mean? If you say somebody has an aversion to something, what does that mean? It means they try to avoid it. It doesn't mean it's unpleasant. It means they want to avoid it. Like, if you're not trying to avoid it, it's not aversive. It's just unpleasant. You know? So even if the e-collar stimulation is a little unpleasant, but they're still embracing it, not aversive, right? So like, for example, when I was doing jujitsu, I loved going to jujitsu class. I loved it, even though people are trying to smother me and choke me and smash me and break my limbs. And a whole lot of time, I'm avoiding things. It's a lot of times, it's unpleasant. Working out is a lot of times unpleasant, but if you're not avoiding it, it's not aversive, right? Football players get tackled. Doesn't mean they don't show up for practice the next day. They'll enjoy the game, right? Sports involve unpleasantness, right? But anything, learning how to play guitar, learning how to, play a video game, it involves unpleasantness, but it's not aversive if you're actively seeking out that opportunity for that unpleasantness. So even if the collar is unpleasant, and I'm not even saying that it is, but even if it is, it's not aversive. The dog isn't trying to avoid it. And that's what I think is really cool. The dog is choosing to turn the collar on so they can turn it off, right? And that's what I think is unique about my approach. I don't think anybody is really exploring it that way. And like most people, it's just like leash pressure. Like I do a similar thing with leash pressure. I call it look, leash, treat. The dog looks at me and starts moving towards me, and that's when I add the pressure. And the dog catches me, they turn the pressure off, and I reward them. What most people do when they teach leash pressure is the dog hits the end of the leash. They match that dog's pressure, wait till he yields, then they give them the release and reward. That's oppositional, right? Most people when they teach the e-collar, they teach it oppositional. I'm going to tap the collar and add pressure. In this process, I've done 2 days with my dog now on this. 2 days now, and I have never used the e-collar in an oppositional way. It has always been to agree with what she's already doing. And that, I think, is the big difference. That's what I think is unique to what I'm doing. I don't know of anybody else who's doing it that way, but that's what I'm doing.
No, it's good. That's good to hear. That's good information, and we're gonna do a deep dive on it. I wanted to touch e-collar. I was hoping John wouldn't ask that because
Yeah.
it's gonna be a whole separate thing. I just feel like we don't have the appropriate time. I mean, if somebody's still listening, hopefully they are. But anyways, but one of the things that you touched on that that I've been actually thinking about a lot, and I don't even think I've really shared it with John too much, is I don't think there's, like when you said the term aversive, there, or even unpleasant, whatever you want to use. I think anything that constitutes learning, you're going to be matched with that element of either or the same, depending on how people want to define it. But at some point, whether you want to say it's quote unquote positive only training, there's aversion or unpleasantness with the dog, the absence of food, whether I'm waiting for it to sit, if I'm shaping, there's always that's going to be met. But
Right.
what you said as far as the analogy with football, and I was actually thinking about, I was like, that's why UFC fighters still do it. I mean, obviously they get paid, but some of them do it, or a lot of them will do it for the sport of doing it. Like a recreational activity.
Yeah.
And a lot of them did it prior to, that's what got them into it. They enjoy the abuse, fighting or whatever. There's some sense of fulfillment and whatever that is on a deeper level. But I think I like the way that you articulated it. And John and I have talked about this. I think nowadays the name of the game as far as the dog industry as a whole, there really isn't there's not much that's being invented conceptually. And we share, a lot of same processes for training. Maybe some chronological differences here and there, but a lot of it is very synonymous. But I think the articulation, and that's where I think makes the best trainer, the best coach for your clients, the best, person is, are you devout in your studies to be articulate enough to meet the variety of consumers, that you're going to inherit, in this industry. And I think that's really the name of the game. And Chad, you've definitely been well proven in that, just in this, hour plus that we've done. Man, I'm excited to do this again. I don't know when we're gonna actually plan it. John and I are fucking dog shit. You actually skipped the line on somebody else supposed to do a follow up. Rosa, we're gonna get with you. But no, dude, I really appreciate it. I actually hate that I feel compelled to end it because I feel like if we go for a 3 hour bit, I don't know how. Honestly,
my
I'm
dog
gonna
needs
be
to go
honest.
take a.
I'm too lazy to break it up. I saw the Canine Paradigm did it, and I'm struggling to fucking figure out all this stuff on Riverside. So that's full transparency.
Yeah.
So I'd rather just do this again, and that's much easier.
I'd love to. I'd love to. I had fun with you guys. It's just been a blast. I really do enjoy talking about dogs, and especially with good people who we share similar ideas with. It's nice. It really is nice to just when you meet people who think same things are important as you do. That's always a great thing, right? Like it's like, and there's not a lot of us. There's not a lot of us who really think about the dog the way that I think we should. It's so easy for the dog to become an obstacle to the dog trainer. Like the dog's behavior is an obstacle, like, because that's what we're paid to do. We're paid to change the behavior. I don't want to go on. I know we're trying to wrap this up. Like for most of my life, like until I met Dick Russell, really until my first large field socialization, which is a whole other conversation. But I had never truly seen a dog up until that point. Every dog that I met, every time I looked at a dog, it was they were something in relation to me. When I was a kid, it was, could I pet that dog? Could I, would that dog be my friend? Like, what kind of dog was that? But it was all about what that dog could give me. And then when I became a trainer, it's what I could get the dog to do or stop doing. It wasn't until I was standing in Dick Russell's field in Greenville Springs, Louisiana, that I went, oh shit, they are, like, I really saw them not as something related to me, but something, their own thing that did not, like, that wanted nothing from me, and I wanted nothing from them. But I just got to see them be, and that's a life-changing thing. And I think when your people are paying you to make things happen or stop happening, it's hard to look at that dog on the other end of that leash as being anything other than an obstacle. Even if you tell yourself that's not what's happening, the choices you make will tell you that's what's happening. And it's so much better when you get to the point where you're literally trying to help the dog, not earn your paycheck.
Yeah, that's dude, man, because I did have a question about behavior mod. I'm not gonna ask it because I know then I'm gonna have to do the work, and I'm super fucking lazy when it comes to this computer. But no, you definitely touch, and I'll end it with John. Obviously, Chad, you're gonna get the last words, but you did touch on something that John and I, we had a conversation, and it was more of like, because my perspective of dogs, like I do it for money, of course. I get paid for my clients outside the military, but thing was, I asked John, I was like, "Do you ever look at dogs as just like a paycheck?" Because my lifestyle isn't contingent off of a dog. Not yet, anyway, until I retire. But I have a stream of income, so I was wondering, like, am I more in tune with the clients and stuff? And I asked John, and I'll let him answer and help close this out. But it was just curious, and like you said, it's that's got to be a hell of a balance. Am I going to eat? Am I going to feed my children? Or is this, and this dog's going to feel happy about sitting, or is he just going to fucking sit so I can pay my bill? And it was such a phenomenon, dude. Like I was out by myself for about, I want to say close to 2 hours thinking about that. And I was like, dude, I don't know what that's like. Yeah, I won't put John's business, but it was after you told me your event where you
Yeah.
had to produce.
Yeah, so there's definitely been some moments where I walked into the back of the kennel and I'm like, oh man, we need to come up with X amount of money. I need to get these dogs trained in and out. And time is a pressure. It puts pressure on all of us as trainers. And I think like the biggest takeaway, there have been those moments where I saw the dog as an obstacle or certain behaviors because I was limited on time. I knew I couldn't go in and do things a certain way. So I had to resort to, okay, we're going to speed this up. We're going to use pressure and I'll do everything I can to make you feel good about it after. And I think one of the best ways to kind of summarize, like when I really connected with a dog or we got through that process, the kennel techs or other people would come in and they go, man, we always know the dog is doing well because we'll come out there and you're just sleeping in the yard, like laying down in the grass and the fenced in area, and the dog's just out there with you laying down too. And we're like, oh, they're doing good. That dog must be towards the end there. Because at that point, I'm like, hey, we accomplished the task. Just be a dog. Like, let's just hang out. Let's relax. But it does put that pressure on, and there are times where I've definitely been in that boat where I'm like, okay, now I'm looking at the dog as an obstacle, or we've got to overcome this, or I have to overcome the dog, and not like a dominance theory way or anything like that, but more so, I just have to get this done within the time constraint.
Yeah, and it's a shitty thing when the thing you love doing is also the way that thing you have to do to survive.
Yep.
Right? Like I always say that I am fortunate enough to be one of those lucky people in the world who gets to do what he loves for a living, but that doesn't mean I want to do it every day. Right? There are days when I would rather just sit at home and watch TV, and I don't want to get my ass out of bed and drive to work and deal with that unreasonable customer or that dog that's just a real puzzle for me that's just not responding the way I think it should. Like there are days that I don't want to be there, but I always tell myself this, and I think this will be my final thought. Like if you want to really hit the end, my worst day at work is better than some people I know's best day at work.
That's for
So I
damn
got
sure.
nothing to complain about. I got
Yeah.
nothing to complain about. Like there's things I don't want to do, and there's times I don't want to do it. But man, I am so fortunate that I never have to go to a job I hate.
Yep.
Never.
Yeah.
So
I'm just gonna laugh. Nah, all right. Last thing before we get to how people reach you, Chad. Because this is, by the time this goes out, this might actually be our last episode technically that's being released for the year. But I know we caught you around the holidays, and I hate to do that to you, but I appreciate you doing it. But what's your Christmas looking like? I mean, I'm not trying to go too in depth of your personal life, but I'm always curious because
No, it's actually pretty good because most of my career I've worked in kennels and I'm still working in kennels. And like if you work in kennels at Christmas, you don't get Christmas, you work, right?
Yeah.
Like this is a busy time for kennels.
exactly.
And most places I work have had actually blackout restrictions that you couldn't ask for time off over the holiday. Like that was one of the rules. And where I am now, I have been fortunate to go back to Texas and visit my family for this will be the second Christmas in a row. So
Nice.
Monday, I'm hopping on a plane and going to visit my family, maybe see my kid, hopefully. He's at that age where he don't necessarily want to see his old man very much anymore. He's
Okay.
like 14 years old, so he's got his own things going on.
Yeah.
But but I get to go home and see my parents and my brother and my nieces and like I said, I'll probably visit with my kid for a little bit. But so yeah, and then I'll be back. So I get to. It's nice to finally get to have Christmases with my family again. It's been a long time since that's been a regular thing. That's what my Christmas is going to be about.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So
All right,
Looking
nice.
forward to that. What about you guys?
John, I'll let you take the lead on that.
I said, so me and my son, our birthday is on Monday. We're doing Christmas Eve as a family, like our whole family's getting together. I've got aunts, uncles, cousins, brothers, sisters. So we'll all be together Christmas Eve. Then on Christmas Day, we're all just staying at our own houses, doing our own
Okay.
personal dinners and kind of relaxing. Every day, like you said, is dog day. I've got 4 Great Danes I got to go pick up in the morning that I'm boarding. And then I've got one Malinois here that's a pet dog. Then I'm looking at 4 dogs here, and I've got 2 more in the outdoor runs right now. So get up early, get it knocked out, and then try and sit with the family. So what about you, Sean?
Not as busy as yours. No, actually, my Christmas starts, I think, Sunday. Me and my ex-wife are gonna sit down and with my son, my 6-year-old son, and we're gonna open gifts for him that we already got him for here in San Antonio, and then they're flying out Christmas Eve. I work Monday, do some training with the dogs. Probably not going to do any actual training, just let them be a dog and let them get out with the military and let them go out. And then I have 2 Christmas. I have 2 dogs that'll be boarding, and then 1 that'll be training. I'll probably make a nice steak and have some good whiskey and enjoy. Watch.
What's your
Lethal
favorite
Weapon.
whiskey?
I'm sorry.
What's your favorite whiskey?
Favorite off the top of my head, I'm gonna go with Oak and Eden right now.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's where I don't know. That's where I'm at. You have a preference, Chad?
Well, I'm more of a bourbon guy, which is a type
Okay.
of whiskey, but
Yeah.
my top shelf bourbon is Blanton.
Blanton's? Oh man, John and I were just talking about that. All right, I'm taking a note. Blanton's, Chad. All right. All right.
That's my top shelf. You know what? Listen, I usually have a bottle, and I don't drink that much, by the way. I'm not a heavy drinker. Like I go months without having a drink, but
Okay.
I usually have like a bottle of just plain old Makers around.
Yeah.
You know, that's like my, if I drank every day, it'd be my everyday whiskey, right? Like
Gotcha.
Blanton or
Yeah.
Makers, right? And then I have my specials. Like I love my Blantons. Like that's my special occasion. Like that's Christmas with my brother. We're gonna share Blantons or something like that. I also I like a good old fashioned, and Bullet makes a pre-mix old fashioned that's really good. Like,
yeah, that's a good that's a good carryover. I actually have a little Bullet cup that I'm drinking out of.
Oh yeah.
Let's see. Yeah. We gotta get you a mug.
Let me see your mug, dude.
Yeah, we gotta get you a working dog and whiskey mug.
All right.
Hey man.
Right on.
Yeah, so but Blanton is like that's the one that, like, if I also like, I don't know, I'm not sure if I pronounced it right, but it's Oban Scott.
Not familiar.
Really nice. That's a nice one. And I have a brandy that called Ararat. That is a lot of mythology behind this brandy. It's mostly bullshit, I'm sure, but it comes from I want to say, where are the Kardashians from?
Fuck, dude, I don't know. I'm so disinterested.
It's what no, but it's I want to say Lebanon, but it's not Lebanon, but it's like
no, it's
one of those Middle East places.
Something close to that.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I can
Anyway, the legend of this brandy is that, and what I call Ararat, is that when Noah's Ark came, and I don't believe in a literal flood narrative. Like, I think that's a metaphor. Like, but the legend of this brandy is that the grapes that are used to make that brandy are from the bush that came off the ark with Noah. Like, that's like he landed on Mount Ararat. He planted those grapes. This brandy is made from those grapes. That's the legend around it. It's a very expensive brand, but it's very good. I had the one bottle I have ever bought of it. I've had for like 7 years. I do not drink it very often, but
nice.
Those are my favorite. Those are my high end alcohols. Blanton's and this Ararat brandy. Everything else I just get like $30 bottles or whatever.
No, yeah, that's more in my budget right now. Yeah. They're Armenian, by the way.
Yeah, Armenian. Yeah, that's what it.
Yeah. For the listeners that are still listening, they're like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah. Well, we talk about alcohol. You guys can edit all that shit out if you want. I don't care.
No, we're gonna leave it in.
Whiskey and working dogs or whatever. Working dogs and whiskey. So
yeah, it fits right in. We said we got to start talking about it. We're trying to get a
high end bottle. Yeah.
Huh?
No, I need to get a high end bottle. I'm like stuck on Woodford right now.
No,
Woodford's okay. Woodford's okay.
no, I can't do a high. Now it's gonna sound bad. Yeah, I can't do a
So,
high end bottle.
like I
I
said,
don't think I'd be able to moderate myself.
once or twice a year, I'll pull out the bottle of Blanton's and drink it. Like, and it's usually just like one glass.
Really?
I am not a heavy drinker though.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's it.
Again, engineering through the military. Yeah. No. Let's go ahead and wrap it up. All right, Chad, real quick. I know you're not good with social media and all that good stuff, but if people want to find you, or what do you have going on that I know you mentioned the Patreon, but is there anything else that people can reach
Yeah, I
you
mean,
or events?
you
What
can
are we doing?
find me on Instagram at Chad Mackin, one word. Facebook, just my name. I have a couple pages, something to bark about, and Pack the Basics on Facebook that I don't really do much with. So, I mean, you can follow them if you want, but I don't really. Facebook doesn't really respond well to businesses unless you pay them. So I've kind of just using my personal account as my business account now.
Right.
So that's pretty much it right now. The Patreon, a YouTube channel, which again is not as active as I want it to be. If you want to subscribe to the Something to Bark About podcast, it will come back at some point in time, and you'll start getting notifications when I start posting up there again. But who knows when that will be? It doesn't hurt you to subscribe, doesn't cost you anything, and it'll just be in your podcast app, and you'll get a notification when I start actually making content there again. But that's pretty much all. I do workshops. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram for updates on that stuff. And yeah, I got nothing. I did a 4-day workshop in New Zealand last month, and I haven't done anything since then. And I don't have anything scheduled for. I'm talking to a guy about doing some stuff in Utah,
Okay.
and maybe going back to Sydney next year. We got some people looking to put me into Australia next year too. So
Nice.
we'll see. Yeah, but that's it. That's my social.
All right.
Cool.
Perfect.
That'll do it. And obviously, if you've made it this far, you might as well spend the extra 2-3 minutes to give us a 5-star review if you feel so inclined on this podcast. John, you got anything else before we wrap this up?
So now we go ahead and wrap it up, man.
All right, that'll do it. Chad, man, definitely appreciate it. And as of now, you'll close out the year with the longest episode for Working Dogs and Whiskey. So whatever that may mean to you.
Sweet.
But thank
Means
you
I
for your
talk too
time.
much.
No, that means it was a good conversation.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it, man. Thank you for volunteering your time just to put your information out, dude. It's been
No,
been a
thanks
pleasure.
for having me, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Sounds good.